Good evening, everyone. I'm Carol Olson-Day of the New York Times. Welcome to the first night of our 11th annual Arts and Leisure Weekend. Our first guest of the weekend is a world-renowned musician, singer, and producer. Her work has sold more than 12 million albums worldwide, and her industry has awarded her its highest accolades, 26 Grammy Awards, the most for any female artist, and the third most of any recording artist in Grammy history. Her latest album, Paper Airplane, which she recorded with her band Union Station, debuted at #1 on the Billboard charts when it debuted last April. You'll hear much more about her and her work from our moderator. He is assistant editor of the Sunday Arts and Leisure section of the Times. He also regularly reviews poetry and other books for the daily paper. He himself is the author of 6 books, including the latest, What a Difference a Dog Makes, and another book called Sing Me Back Home, Love, Death, and Country Music, merging cultural criticism and memoir. You can see the connection: poetry, country music, lyrics, dogs, arts and leisure. Please join me in welcoming Dana Jennings and our very special guest, Alison Krauss.
Well, thank you, everybody. We'll hit some country notes, I suspect, and maybe some, given that Alison has worked with Robert Plant, maybe some non-country notes. But thanks for being here, and I hope you go into some other of the events this weekend too. Alison, thanks for kicking off the weekend.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
So, in a sense, the way your career has progressed, you're kind of a hybrid artist. You really started out as a pure bluegrass player and singer, kind of morphed into a pop country, bluegrass, rock and roll, fiddling queen. So in 2012, what does it mean to be a fiddler and a country singer?
Oh boy, what does it mean? Boy, I don't even think about that kind of stuff. When you were saying, started out, as playing pure bluegrass, I really grew up on all different kinds of things. My mother is an illustrator, and my father was a psychologist turned real estate man, and so we got introduced to all different kinds of music and cultural things. I'd go with my mother. She'd take me to see the dress rehearsals of performances at the University of Illinois. We'd see opera dress rehearsals and kabuki theater, and my grandmother played piano and played folk songs, and so I had a real wide variety of music growing up in the house. And my parents both were children of immigrants, so things musical things weren't necessarily encouraged that much, because my father came over after the war and they were interested in just kind of getting by, and my mother she grew up in the house with 2 artists, and so she was very talented in that area too, so they followed that, and they wanted to make sure if we had any ability anywhere that they found it. So in addition to having to take instrument classes, we were in sports, which was a disaster. And dance, which was pretty rough as well. But we had a real wide variety of things. So I also listened to Top 40 radio at the same time that I was into bluegrass music. So, and the people that I played music with were very much influenced by the Beatles and wrote their own music. So I had a very open mind toward music in general, and not a narrow path.
So what's the, from looking back when you were a kid, what's the first top 40 song that really killed you, that you just couldn't get enough of it?
Cats in the Cradle by Harry Chapin.
Wow. Have you ever fooled around with that as a bluegrass or country song?
No, I haven't, but we did sing it for the Kiwanis Club. My dad's Kiwanis Club. We did.
I have to admit, that's a good song, but Taxi by Harry Chapin, I could actually hear you singing the high part in Taxi. That would be pretty cool. You and Robert Plant doing the high part. So what's the first bluegrass song that just blew you away?
Oh, geez. Boy, I'd have to say, I could say an album was the thing that got me most excited. I heard a lot of different things. Well, there's two records. One was J.D. Crowe and the New South from 1975 with Tony Rice and Ricky Skaggs.
Yeah.
And then Clinch Mountain Gospel by Ralph Stanley.
Yeah.
And Keith Whitley was singing lead. Those two records, kind of changed my life.
In what way? When you say they changed your life, talk about the New South album.
Tony Rice's music in general, I don't know how much, of it had to do with my age, and that age for everybody is so fascinating, but it had me. I was always daydreaming to that music, and I knew which house, he'd always drive up to in the songs. It was on a route out of Champaign where I lived, and it kind of formed my, ideas of romance and a home, and it was such a, an idyllic lifestyle. What was portrayed in all those songs, the home and family. There was no place better than home. There was nobody more beautiful than the girl next door.
Right. And
everybody was always wanting to go back home. It was a very simple life of values, the very basic values of living.
Yeah, Tony Rice has one of those voices. Like Dan Tyminski in Union Station. I have to admit, on that album, though, my favorite song, of course, is the one that's the antithesis of what you're talking about, is Rock, Salt, and Nails.
Oh, yeah.
I could actually hear you singing that too, because it's so.
I love that song.
Have you sung that over the years, or?
When in jam session.
Yeah, for fun.
I sang harmony, but for me, Tony, even more so than his voice and how the songs came across and how he arranged them. I think it's probably true of all music. It's what he chose to sing. It's the subject matter and the person I believed him to be.
Right.
The man he was to me in those tunes and those records.
Have you had a chance to play with Tony over the years?
We have, yeah, and it was amazing experience. And we did a small tour with him in 2007 where we played his music and we all played together, the band, and Jerry Douglas, he says, we were doing rehearsals in Nashville, and he goes, "Take Tony to the symphony tonight." And I go, "I don't want to go with Tony." And he goes, "What's the matter with you?" I'm like, "Well, what if he doesn't have fun and he doesn't want to ride in the car with me?" And he goes, "Just go." And I'm like, "Oh." So I went and picked him up. And I was nervous. I'm like, "Ooh." So I went to get him, and we rode down there, and it had to be one of the best 10 minutes of my entire life, getting to ride with him. And he talked about music, and he has, lost his voice in the last 15, 20 years, and he talked about that and how it changed the way he looked at the guitar, and it was just incredible, because you have an idea of who you think your favorites are, what their identity is as a person, and I was not let down by any stretch.
Well, that's reassuring, right?
It was great.
And on Clinch Mountain Gospel, when you think about those songs, are there one or two of them that stand out to you over the years?
Oh, geez, that whole record. I remember where I was. Nelson Mandrell and John Pennell, they were in a band called Silver Rail, which then changed into Union Station. And Nelson played me Clinch Mountain Gospel. And of course I love Oh Death, and it's different than the one from Oh Brother that Ralph sang. And it's a trade-off between, if you know the story of the song at all, it's a man speaking to death, and death speaks back. And from the movie Oh Brother, it's all a cappella, and on this particular tune, it's not on Clinch Mountain Gospel. And yeah, Ralph is death, and Keith is a man, and they trade back and forth, and it is just terrifying. It's just great.
Okay. You know, I mean, we'll talk about the other kinds of music you've done, but I guess I want to focus on bluegrass a little more. It seems to me that one of the cool things about bluegrass is that, you know, someone like you who, you know, your career blossomed in the late 80s, early 90s, that, you know, most of the bluegrass founders were still alive when you started your career. And I mean, did you ever get to play or sing with Bill Monroe, for example?
I got to, there's a jam. The first bluegrass festival I went to was Bean Blossom, Indiana. And I was 12, and we went to that festival, and he did a big jam on the hill at sunset. I can't remember if it was Saturday night or which night it was, or it was the first night of the festival, but we all got up there, and I stood next to Kenny Baker and some other guys, and it was pretty amazing when I think back. Yeah, I mean, everybody was around, and everybody was really accessible. You know, I'd worship from afar, but you could get right up on them if you wanted.
So did you, excuse me, so did you, when you were a kid, did you play any of those great Kenny Baker, Bill Monroe fiddle tunes, like Jerusalem Ridge?
I did my best at a couple of them. But I got to know Kenny. Kenny's fiddle tunes are they're just so beautiful. I got to know Kenny a little bit, and nothing like him.
Do you feel like, I mean, just by having that little bit rub off, do you feel when you meet, when you meet younger fiddlers now, do you feel like you're able to pass on a little bit of, you know, someone like Kenny or Vassar Clemens to, and Alison Krauss too, to the younger fiddlers?
I don't know how much anybody's really interested in. I don't know. I mean, I would hope there'd be something positive I might pass on. I don't know what it is, but I would hope there'd be something positive.
Yeah, there must be something positive. Well, I mean, when you look in the mirror these days, do you know how it is when you look in the mirror? Sometimes you see the 10-year-old, and sometimes you see the person who's older. Do you see a fiddler, or do you see a singer?
Oh, I just see someone who needs to get in the shower. That's
I think we've all been there. Sorry for getting cosmic. You know,
No, but yeah, I mean that's about all that comes to mind.
Okay. You don't see Kenny Baker staring back.
No, I don't. That would be nice. But I don't.
So when I know you started playing violin when you were really little, right? And then a little while later you took up bluegrass fiddle. When did you realize that besides being a fiddler that you were a singer too? I mean, how old were you when you realized that, hey, I sound pretty good?
I knew that I liked to do it. Like I liked it to a degree, but when I really started to enjoy it was when I started singing harmony. That was, then I loved it. You know, and playing, I like to play enough, but not really that much. I liked being in a band situation and working out the harmonies I just loved that, yeah.
Who are some of the people that you've really enjoyed singing harmony with over the years?
Boy, I'm trying to think if there was a time I really haven't enjoyed it. I've loved it. I think that is such a it's such an intimate thing to sing harmony, and you are really trying to match somebody's phrasing, and when you hear somebody sing, it's so, like, I'll use Dolly Parton as an example. You listen to her sing, and it's just the easiest thing in the world to listen to. She's just going all over the place, and you think, oh, I'll get it. It'll be no. There's absolutely no way that you can possibly imagine how different and unique the way she turns things. It takes forever, longer to sing harmony for her than anybody I've ever sang harmony for, because it's so unpredictable and it's so natural. And I think that's got to be part, besides everything else that makes her so unique. But she turns phrases like nobody else, but it sounds so natural you wouldn't think that it would be as tough and as difficult as it is to match. I mean, like nothing else. It is so hard to match her. I'm gonna die.
When you realized that, you know, singing was going to be a significant part of your music career, I mean, Dolly was one of the people you really listened hard to, right?
I listened hard to her later, yeah.
Okay.
And I was so into Tony Rice,
Right.
and so into Ricky Skaggs, and especially Ricky Skaggs on all those country records. And you know, I learned to sing harmony to those records, really, and Tony's records, and then Rhonda Vincent, who was a huge deal where I was growing up. And I remember the first time I saw her. I remember her walking on stage. We were in Columbia, Missouri, and it was a big band kind of showcase, and I'd heard about her family band forever, and she got up there to sing, and I swear I thought she was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen, and she got up there and everybody was like, oh. I was like, oh my God. And so, I listened a lot to her, and then Shawn Colvin when I heard her. I remember where I was when I heard her, and the Cox family were a huge influence on me.
Yeah, the two albums that you did with the Cox family in the early 90s, to me are like among the high points of bluegrass in the 90s. Can you talk about them a little bit? One was a gospel album, right?
Oh yeah, then we did three. We did three of them.
Okay.
We did a gospel record together, and then I produced a couple records of theirs for Rounder. I can't remember which year that was, but I met them in Perrin, Texas, and I had heard about them, and I knew that the son in the band, Sidney, was a songwriter, and I looked forward to meeting them, and we became friends instantly. And we've recorded, I don't know how many of Sidney's songs now.
Okay. Yeah, well, I mean, just some of those songs are, you know, it's always, you know, even when you get older and more jaded, when you're able to hear a song once and just go, wow, this is an amazing song. And you know, one of them I think of is, you know, When God Dips His Pen in My Heart. I mean, that's just, you know, talk about harmony singing. I mean, that's just a wonderful song.
Yeah, they had have such a wealth of material. The dad, Willard, has collected things over the years and has such a love for country music and its history. He's amazing. He really coached everybody how to sing.
So you feel like even though you were kind of like the star on those albums, you learned a lot from Dad.
Oh, he was definitely the star.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, duets have become or are a significant part of your musical legacy. I mean, first of all, you have another great singer in Union Station, and Dan Tyminski. So what's it like singing with Dan?
Boy, Dan would be like, he is, how do you say this? It's so easy to sing to him because he's always on, and there's no mistake when he hits a note, and then you can kind of just ride on that, and you're safe. You're safe. If you hold on to that, you're safe, yeah. But no, I always thought it was nice with this band, is it's such an opposite. You know, I call it when someone is singing in their romance. You know, my romance is always kind of the last. It's when you don't have any pride left, and then you kind of spill your story. And Dan's is always, to me, he's the man against the machine.
Well, it's funny. I've been listening to you and the band a lot the last couple of weeks, and one of the things I noticed that I'd never noticed before, that in a sense sometimes you're kind of duetting with Jerry Douglas's dobro, and really, you know, the purity of your voice and the purity of the dobro really they elevate a lot of the songs that you guys do. He is
a dictator. in the best possible way.
Uh-huh.
You know, you don't. There's no way not to react to what he plays. He has such a mood and such a presence that you cannot help but react to what he does. And it's really magical what he plays.
It's really striking listening closely to your records when Jerry's there. I mean, sometimes you're leading and he's following, or he's leading and you're following, and it's pretty cool.
He's an amazing person to have to react to. It's funny because when we go in the studio, you know, you cut everything and Jerry just kind of plays everywhere, and then he says, well, you can take it out, you know, where you don't want it later.
Mm-hmm.
But we never do.
I have to admit that one of your duets that, you know, it almost makes me cry every time I listen to it is Whiskey Lullaby with Brad Paisley. And how did that tune come about? You know, how, that the two of you ended up being paired on that?
He called about doing the duet. And I always knew that he was a fan of bluegrass music, but he called to have me go sing it, and I went and sang it, and I thought, wow, that's dark, you know. And
it's very just two doomed alcoholics, you know, the usual.
Yeah, I mean, but it turned out nice. I thought it turned out really nice.
I mean, is that a case where you know, when you listen to it on playback, you kind of go, ooh, that's us?
It's not till later, usually, when things are finished. If I'm in there a while, then you get a little bit immune to that. You have to get some space before you go, oh, that was okay. Usually years later, oh, it's okay.
And of course, the duet partner that, you know, for some people brought you a new audience was Raising Sand with Robert Plant. And can you just tell us a little bit how that came about? You know, just kind of that unlikely or seemingly unlikely mixing and matching of you and Plant.
Yeah, I got a call from him one time. I was lying down. My son was a little baby at the time, and I was lying like this, and I get a call from him, and I'm like having to talk all quiet because the baby's going to sleep. It's Robert. And I'm like, what? And he just started talking. You know, he said, I've heard your music, would love to get together sometime. And I'm like, yeah, that'd be really great. That'd be great. And he goes, let me give you my number. And I'm like, well, I can't really get up right now. And he's like, really? Okay. And so I thought, well, and I didn't want to go, well, hey, you know. So a few years went by. And then really, seriously. And then I got a call. He was playing at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Ohio. And he was doing a tribute to Lead Belly and asked me to come play that. And I went and did that.
Was that LED Belly or, no, sorry.
Oh, that's good. And so I went and did that, and I thought, what in the world is this going to be like? You know, I thought, what is he? And so I came into the room, and I walked up, and he had his glasses down, and he goes, oh. And he goes, there you are. I said, yeah. But anyway, so I thought this is going to be interesting. And he talked about Ralph Stanley That was our first conversation. Talked about driving through the mountains and listening to Ralph Stanley, and I thought, oh, this is great. And I felt like I knew exactly who he was, and that he is tireless in the next thing to keep him up all night. You know, like musically, he's always searching and always, you know, such a passionate person and always on a quest for that. And it was great. It was a really great experience, and what a lovely, genuine human being.
What was the process like in the recording studio doing those tracks? To me, one of the great things about that album is that it doesn't sound like anything else from that era. In fact, it kind of sounds outside of time.
I thought that T-Bone just did a beautiful job. He's a master caster. You know, he really knows. He wants huge personalities, and it really shows up. And when we got together to talk about making a record together, you know, I'm like, well, I don't want to produce it. He's like, I don't want to produce it. And so we were trying to think who was a huge personality, and I had worked with T-Bone a number of times, and Robert was just all over calling him about it, and T-Bone was very excited, and you know, Robert says, let's give it 3 days. If it doesn't work, then we'll just say goodbye. And, I said, and so we went in, and it was really fun. You know, we both kind of took our gut feelings and left them at the door to make sure that this had its own identity away from us, and I think the contrast between us made it a romantic record. You know, there's such differences that it really it made it something very different.
One of the striking things about that record is just the two of you just sound very relaxed, and almost sometimes it's like, no, you take the lead. No, you take the lead. I mean, there. You know, it's really, it just feels like two artists having fun and not trying to, you know, one up the other. I mean,
it was very relaxed in there, and it was really about what we were together, and what that was like than anything separate. It was a very relaxed, nice time. We did have a very good time, and T-Bone is very relaxed, yeah.
So did you listen to Led Zeppelin when you were a kid, or not really?
No, I listened more to Robert's music when I was growing up from MTV days, his solo career, and of course I knew Led Zeppelin's music, but it wasn't something that I had, you know, listened to as much as I did his solo career, just from my age. But my brother, I remember him in the next room, just going, I can't believe this. I can't be listening to Led Zeppelin. This is amazing. I can't believe it.
What was your brother's reaction when you told him that you were going to be recording with Robert Plant?
Oh, he thought it was crazy. And then, you know, after I had met him in Ohio, he goes, what's he like? And I said, he's just like us.
Except he was in Led Zeppelin. You mentioned MTV, and I guess, you know, you were an MTV kid. I mean, you unavoidably. So what's 13-year-old Alison Krauss listening to when she gets home? You know, gets home from middle school or junior high, and you know, wants to relax before doing her homework. You know, what videos were you looking for? What tunes were you downloading? No.
Oh, I like. Oh.
No, what was getting to you then? That, you know, outside of the bluegrass world.
I liked lots of stuff. I really liked Prince. And Shaka Khan.
Yeah, no. I mean that.
And you know, and of course, I believe it that Whitney Houston had just come out, so we were all just out of our minds for her. I mean, I liked a lot of funk. I liked that, and you know, hard hard English rock I liked a lot.
Like who?
Oh, like Paul Rogers, you know, and Bad Company and Free.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed it. We liked, of course, Skinner. We liked, and AC/DC we liked.
Mm-hmm.
Like.
So what do you, given you mentioned AC/DC, have you listened to the bluegrass cover band, you know, Hayseed Dixie?
I heard a little bit of it, yes, I did.
So what do you think?
Well, you know.
Does it work?
Does it work? In which way?
As bluegrass or as bluegrass metal?
It's a different message, isn't it? Like.
Let's go back and wreck the old home place?
No,
Is that?
No.
Hayseed Dixie. So when so you're at least, you know, as most teenagers are, you know, you kind of have this double track, if not a quadruple or, you know, pentangle track. Did you have a little core of bluegrass friends your age, or was that just a whole other part of your life?
Yeah, I didn't, unless, you know, at festivals we'd see people that we were tight with, but yeah, nobody at school knew what I was doing.
No, you didn't bring your fiddle to school?
I didn't. I didn't bring it.
You didn't talk about your weekends at the festivals?
I didn't.
So why didn't you talk about your weekends at the festivals?
It just never came up. The bluegrass festival thing, nobody ever really brought up bluegrass festivals at school. But I did, in the same town, I grew up, who was my best friend as a kid, Andrea Zahn, who was a very accomplished fiddle player. And
Oh, that's neat.
yeah, so we were in the same town, so we would talk about all that stuff.
So you weren't talking about Bill Monroe with your friends?
It didn't come up.
I have a question I meant to ask when you met Bill Monroe when you were 12. So did he give you a $50?
No.
Okay. Bill, when he often would see a kid, would give them a $50 or a quarter and rub them on the head. Did you get the head rub?
I don't remember. I don't remember getting that either.
Oh, okay.
But it was during the jam, you know.
Oh, okay. So, once you got your feet wet, weren't you 14 when you recorded that first album for Rounder?
15.
50. Okay, sorry.
No.
So.
Should have waited a couple more years, maybe.
Well.
Yeah, maybe a few more.
They made you do it, right? They said. So what was that like? You're 15. You have this other little. I'm sure at the time. Did it seem like a little life, or did it seem like? What seemed more significant? Growing up in Champaign, or this kind of burgeoning bluegrass thing? What?
Oh, much more growing up than in Champaign.
So were you shocked? Did I assume Rounder approached you, right?
Well, I was in a band from Indianapolis called Classified Grass, and they were very serious about getting a record deal, and they sent packages out to the three labels that were recording bluegrass, at the time, Sugar Hill and Rounder and Flying Fish, and I always say, you never know what's going to happen, because the song I sang was like the fourth song on the demo tape.
Excuse me.
And Ken Irwin from Rounder made it all the way to the fourth song, and had he not listened all the way there, then I don't know what I'd be doing right now if he hadn't.
Still being Classified Grass.
It was a good time. But yeah, they sent the demo tapes out, and then they asked for me to make another demo.
So when the album came out, was it like you got home from school one day and your mother said, honey, your album came in the mail?
Pretty much, I think.
It's like,
actually,
okay.
I think she woke me up and showed me the box of them. I actually think is what happened, that they came in.
So when do you feel that you consciously, started, incorporating, kind of your vision of what bluegrass or country could be? How long did that take you from, from being, a teenage fiddle player who had a really nice voice and could really fiddle to someone who, who was making her own artistic decisions? How did that transition happen?
I don't think it's ever not been there, really.
Okay.
I mean, because, the songs that, I chose for that record, they were original songs that, John Pennell had written and Nelson Mandrell had written,
Okay.
who I was in the band with. And, and I would drive around with John Pennell, and he'd be playing me all this different stuff. We listened to the Beatles, we listened to everything. And I believe because I played in a band with these really great songwriters, I mean, these are great songwriters.
Yes.
And I was drawn to that. I was drawn to, original material that wasn't straight ahead bluegrass. Not that that isn't a huge passion of mine, but
Right.
I knew that, me singing about some of the things that had been sung about for years and years didn't necessarily fit how I sang.
Right.
And so I don't think that it's ever not been there. That
Okay.
I've always chosen my own material,
Right.
except for, Raising Sand. But, I couldn't, that's too important, that part of it, that's the best part of it to me.
Okay.
Is that of choosing what you're going to say.
What's a couple songs over the years that you've really, really wanted to cover that just didn't quite work out the way you wanted to? Just to your ear, just kind of disasters instead of what you wanted to get out there.
You mean as far that made it on a record, or that?
No, well, if you want to talk about that, that's okay. No, but I mean ones that didn't make it, that
that we recorded.
a song, right? A song you really wanted to get out there, but it just didn't work.
Well, I brought one to Raising Sand that I'd always wanted to sing, which was Tecumseh Valley, that Townes Van Zandt wrote. I'd heard Nancy Griffith sing that. She'd done a DVD, and I heard her sing that, and I was sitting in the audience, and I thought, oh, that story. She told the story, and I believe her middle name is Caroline, and she would always imagine herself in that role because she felt tied to it because of the name. If I'm watching, I'm all wrong, but that's what I remember. And I don't.
You're our expert.
Well, no, I mean I could be wrong, but that's what I remember. And I thought, oh, I love that story and the song, and I don't know if I felt tied to it because I was so moved by her story that may or may not be true that I remember.
Right.
And so I brought it to Raising Sand, and it was just too much of a different vibe for the record. Yeah, but I love the tune.
One of the, we talked about harmony singing before, and just choosing songs. And one of your earlier songs that I really love is "I Don't Believe You've Met My Baby" by the Louvin Brothers. Were you a real Louvin Brothers fan, or was it more a case you just happened to really love that Louvin Brothers song?
Well, that song, there was a family band from Illinois called the C.W. Brock family and the Next of Kin, and they used to sing that. And the two sisters, and they would trade that off and sing that, and we always loved that song. Okay. But I'm a huge Louvin Brothers fan, but Jerry suggested that for his record. And the story is so beautiful. If you don't know it, it's this guy has a dream, and in the dream, he's going to meet his darling, and here comes another guy, and he sees his true love put her arm around the guy, and he's smiling at her, and she's smiling at him, and he's like, "What's up?" and then it turns out, and the guy says, "My sister wants to marry," and so it's just a brother, and it's a beautiful story. But every time that line comes in, I'd be like, whoa, and on stage I'd try to sing it, whoa. And I thought, when it came up to sing the tune for Jerry, I thought, that's not the same. It's not the same if a girl's singing it.
Mm-hmm.
Then I thought, it's even worse if it's even sadder.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I love that. I love that song. I got a chance to spend a little time with Charlie Louvin.
Mm.
I went out to eat with him one time. He goes, what do you say you and me go to the China buffet? And I said, I'm all over it. So I went and I got to ask him about all these songs.
Oh.
It was amazing. I'll never forget it. And because there was a period of time that all these tunes would come up, and it's before I knew who wrote everything. And I thought, that's my favorite song. This is my favorite song. And they were all written by Charlie Louvin. It just kept coming up, and it was insane. But he told me all about them.
What's a couple of good stories from that,
Oh.
from that dinner?
Well, there's a song called Tiny Broken Heart.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, it was always my favorite. I couldn't even get through it. But where it's told in first person, and the boy, it's about a boy who has a little gal next door, and he's in love with the little gal, and they'd hang out all the time. And then turns out there was a moving van there, and he's like, who are these people here, Dad? Who are these people? And he tries to convince his father to buy the farm next door, and he says, Daddy, buy the farm so they can stay. Give them all the toys that dear Santa gave. Give them all the pennies in my little piggy bank. Pennies that my darling helped me save.
It's the country.
It's just unbelievable. And there's one line, I'm only 7 now, but it's just like you say, Daddy, someday I'll be a man. And he tries to convince the dad to buy this so his sweetheart won't move away, and it just wears me out. And but I got to ask him about that song, and I'm like, what's the story with that? And he says, well, that's me. And he said, next door to me lived a little girl named Nell. And I was like, oh, no. And he said she was just the most beautiful little girl he'd ever seen. It was even worse that it was, of course, true.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you ever get to sing with Charlie?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But I got to talk to him, and I rode back on a plane, and he happened to be on the same plane, and we
that's
sat
nice.
there and talked the whole way, and no, I don't think I ever got to sing with him, but he did tell another story that was great
Okay.
to tell. There's a song called Mama's Angels that is, I asked him about his mom and dad, and I said, what were your parents? What was it like? They were tobacco farmers, and he says his mother, he said, was a praying woman, and his father was rough as a cob. And I remember when he said it, because, Charlie had quite a reputation of being very hard. And I thought, ooh, for a person who has a reputation of being a very hard man, I can't even imagine what his father was like. And but he told the story in this song. If you go find it, it's just beautiful. He'd had a dream about his mother walking into heaven, and that angels came in and got her and walked her through heaven's open door. And it is beautiful, really beautiful. And he said he'd be going to sleep in his room, and he would hear his mother praying in the next room for him.
Wow.
It's beautiful.
Thank you. I mean, that's really sweet.
Yeah, so I was at the China buffet, and he told me all that.
I mean, what do you do when you're a singer, and maybe you're singing something? It could be something you've sung for a long time, or maybe it's something new. Let's say you're singing Mother's Prayer, and you're in the middle of it, and then it kind of sneaks up on you, and it's like the song is going to overcome you. Has that happened?
Yeah, oh yeah. It happened all the time on that Don't Believe You've Met My Baby. It would wear me out, but it just goes, and you have to go.
So what do you do? I mean, do you just kind of say, take 38?
No, I mean, you just go, because it just wouldn't be, it wouldn't be cool.
I mean, Do you like that aspect? I'm sure there are some singers who will just, well, I'm going to sing the song. You know, it's not gonna make me cry. But I mean, do you try to leave yourself open to kind of the emotional feelings in a song like that? And
I don't feel like I have to leave myself open. I think
Okay.
it just does.
okay,
And you wouldn't be drawn to it if you weren't connected to it in
Mhm.
some way. Dimming of the Day, that song, I couldn't sing it for a really long time. I had to get over it.
Mhm.
And first time I had to sing it for something, like if I even, like, there's a show called the Transatlantic Sessions that Jerry produces the music
Mhm.
for, and they had this woman playing the fiddle, and she was playing the fiddle, and I'm singing it, and I'm going, what if she was as sad as the person who wrote this song? And I start thinking about her being real sad, and then my eyes would well, it's just like, it was ridiculous for a while.
It's like, oh,
You
Alison's
just gotta stop. I'm like, I just gotta stop. But yeah.
So do the guys in the band ever say, let's make Alison cry?
No, but they've made fun of me. Yes, they have.
Well, that's the
They
nature
have.
of guys, right?
No, they have made fun of me, yes.
So you live in Nashville now, right? So tell us a little about the Nashville life from your point of view. I mean, as a mid-career country singer, bluegrass singer, what's it like being in Nashville these days? Do you have to go to all the Tennessee Titan games?
No, I'm a bit of a hermit.
Okay.
So, yeah, the grocery store and Walgreens.
Do you see some of your peers at those places occasionally? Little Jimmy Dickens? No.
I've never seen him at the Walgreens, no. No, I mean, I don't see a lot of folks every now and then.
Okay.
Every now and then, but not too often.
So you're still an Opry cast member, right?
Yeah.
So how often do you play at the Opry in a given year? I mean, do you go pretty regularly or once in a while?
It's more once in a while now. I'd
Mhm.
love to do it with everybody, but everybody has different schedules in the
Right.
band. So I'll go do it every now and then with a kind of a different configuration.
Mm-hmm.
But it's tough on the weekends because you're never there. You're always traveling.
Right. That's the catch-22 of being an Opry member, right? So what was it like? If I remember right, you were 21 when you were asked to join the cast, right?
Yes.
So at that point, did it mean a lot to you, or was it kind of, I mean, did you know enough to know that it's like, wow, this is the Grand Ole Opry?
Yes. We all
Okay.
do enough. Yeah, we were
No,
very excited. Yeah, it was very exciting, and when I think about, that time, that was the musicians on the Opry were the same staff band that had been there for decades, and they'd played behind everybody. And I remember, some of them being so encouraging to all of us, and we thought that was pretty amazing.
You probably, you appeared on the Opry probably before you joined the cast, right? So how old were you the first time you played at the Opry?
17.
Wow. And who were some of the members there that night?
Well, Bill Monroe. Bill Monroe
Right.
was there. I've got some pictures of us with Bill Monroe.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, that was very exciting. And well, of course, I think Minnie Pearl was there, and Roy Acuff was there.
Wow, you're on the same stage with Minnie Pearl. How did that feel?
Well, it was crazy. We wore the camera out.
That's, during all this, were either of your parents like real bluegrass fans, or were they just happy that you had found something that you loved doing and that you did well?
Well, they had a very varied collection of music, and there was a Flatt and Scruggs record they had
Mm-hmm.
in the collection. But as far as like really following bluegrass, no.
But I assume they were chaperoning you around
For a while.
when you were a teenager.
Yeah. Not as long as they probably would have liked.
To shift gears a little bit, some of your when you think about your future or goals that you have beyond what you've already done, are you tempted at all to do kind of an offbeat kind of fiddle record? I guess you did your offbeat record with Robert Plant, but I mean, you know how Chris Thile has the Punch Brothers, and Alison Brown kind of does, kind of bluegrass that's not bluegrass, and and there's Bela Fleck. I mean, have you ever been tempted to try something that's a little more string quartet-like, or do you feel like it doesn't play to your strengths?
I just kind of go whatever is appealing, and very few times, I don't even know if we've done it yet, like do you kind of go, here's a theme, and let's, I don't even really plan that far ahead,
Right.
I usually find, songs first, and then go wherever that's going.
Okay.
And yeah,
Because I mean, actually, Jerry Douglas does some stuff that's a little more unusual than straight ahead bluegrass.
yeah, and and for a lot of this, if I get to sing harmony with somebody, I really get a real window into that whole thing. But if I find material that, I don't set out to.
Okay.
Well, that's a hard question. I guess I don't think that far ahead.
You don't I don't want to do an avant-garde Alison Krauss album. You don't.
I don't know what that would be.
Who are you among the current crop of singers? Your peers and colleagues. Who have you sung with lately? Who you really enjoyed singing harmony with, or current singers you especially admire the way they sound?
You mean in bluegrass music?
Or country music. I mean, you are.
Well, I have to say who I hadn't heard before is the guy who sings with Wolf Mother. I couldn't even tell you his name. I just heard Wolf Mother.
But you mean the?
I did.
Wait, is that a metal band?
I don't think it's metal, no, but they're Australian, and I had just heard them in the last 2 days. My son played them for me, and it was so great, and that's all we've been listening to.
So is it rock and roll?
Yeah, it's fantastic. I'm sure everybody.
Any
knows
Wolf
about
Mother
it.
fans out there?
Yeah, right?
Oh, okay.
Because I'm too busy going to the grocery store and Walgreens to know what's going on. But fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah, I loved it.
Well, thank you. What about your your Nashville peers? Is there anyone you particularly enjoy listening to these days? I mean, I know it's a big room, but.
Oh boy, but there's a singer I love. I love Leanne Womack. I think that she is so great. I haven't got to sing with her, but I would love to. She's fantastic.
I bet you can arrange that.
I would love to arrange that. But I think she's just, I think I know who that person is when I hear her sing.
Okay.
I love a musician or a singer who I think that they must have some other job, and it's just how they tell their story. Like I forget the whole thing about that's what they do, and they just stopped off to tell you what's going on, but they actually don't do that for a living. They do something else, and she has that. I don't ever think about her being, a singer as a job. I think she must be doing something else, and just tells me this stuff about her life every now and then on the radio.
Well, I think that it's one of the reasons we still love to listen to Merle Haggard, right?
Yeah,
because it feels like, they let Merle out on parole. He's going to sing us a couple songs. It's like
he's my example of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have? Are there any specific projects you're working on right now that you'd like to let us know about, or you're just kind of waiting?
We're just being cool right now. Yeah, we're just, we just finished a long bit of touring.
Okay.
And we're going to do some more, so we're just hanging.
Okay, hanging is good.
Hanging.
Alison, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's been a
Thank you.
pleasure. And all of you, thank you.